Welcome to the new video of NeuroPhilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. The silent absence within. You may know the feeling well, sitting in a room full of people, laughter around you, conversation flowing, yet inside you feel strangely absent. It is as though there is a weight pressing on your chest, a heaviness that no one else can see. Perhaps you are in a relationship, with family nearby, friends sending messages, work obligations filling your day, yet beneath the surface, something feels hollow. It is not loneliness in the simple sense. It is something quieter, deeper, harder to name. This quiet absence is not weakness. It is not ordinary neediness or a lack of social connection. It is, in fact, the psyche itself sending a signal. A muffled cry from the soul, warning you that you have drifted too far from your own inner ground. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as a form of silent crisis. Many of his patients, he noted, did not suffer from dramatic disorders or recognizable mental illnesses. Instead, they carried within them a subtle but devastating emptiness, a disconnection from meaning itself. What happens when you lose contact with this inner symbolic world? Outwardly, life may look perfectly fine. You have the job, the relationship, the responsibilities fulfilled. Yet inwardly, the thread of life feels frayed. Each day becomes a repetition of tasks rather than an experience of depth. You may not even notice it at first, until the sense of being alive begins to fade into a sense of simply existing. And inevitably, this inner disconnection spills into your relationships. When you are not in touch with your own soul, you begin to expect others to carry the weight of your emptiness. You look to a partner, a friend, or even your family to give you the sense of meaning that you have lost inside yourself. Without realizing it, you project onto them an impossible role, healer of your wounds, filler of your void. At first, this projection may even seem like love. The relationship feels intense, powerful, magnetic. But slowly, cracks appear. The other cannot endlessly supply the depth you refuse to find within. Frustration rises, distance grows, and conflict follows. The bond collapses, not because love itself has failed, but because a fantasy has dissolved. This pattern often repeats. You may find yourself moving from one relationship to another, hoping each time that the new connection will provide what the last could not. Or you may stay in a long-term relationship that feels sterile, desperately trying to reignite a flame that was never truly lit. All the while, the real issue remains untouched, the absence within you that no external person can heal. Jung understood that this absence is rooted in what we repress, deny, or forget. It lives in the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. It lives in the Anima and Animus, those inner images of the feminine and masculine that we project outward rather than integrate within. And it lives in the soul itself, which is suffocated when life becomes entirely outward, measured only by appearances, possessions, and performance. This chapter is not here to give you a simple answer, because there is no simple answer. The message is not that love is meaningless, or that human connection is futile. Rather, it is that love becomes fragile when we ask it to bear what only the soul can hold. If you are seeking outside for the cure to what is broken inside, you will remain trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. The emptiness you feel is not trivial. It is not a passing mood. It is the unconscious calling you, insisting that you return. And if you are willing, you can begin this journey. A journey inward, toward the hidden layers of your psyche, toward the forgotten ground of your being. For there, and only there, lies the key to transforming that silent absence into a deeper, truer presence. The whispering crisis. The most devastating psychological suffering of our time is not explosive. It does not make headlines. It does not arrive with dramatic outbursts or breakdowns. Instead, it creeps in quietly, like a slow-moving fog. It whispers rather than shouts. Day after day, it settles into your life until you grow accustomed to its weight, no longer even noticing its presence. You wake up each morning and go through the motions. You fulfill your obligations. You talk with friends. You scroll through content. You attend gatherings. Outwardly, life is being lived. But beneath the surface, something is absent. Every action feels strangely mechanical, as if performed on autopilot. The colors of life seem faded, the tastes dulled, the days repetitive. This is not the sharp sting of depression, nor the paralysis of crisis. It is something subtler, what Jung observed in countless patients as an erosion of meaning. He noted that many people who came to him did not display any recognizable clinical disorder. They were not hysterical, not delusional, not obviously broken. On the contrary, they were often admired. They were professionals with stable jobs, spouses, children, and social recognition. Yet behind the surface of success, they confessed to feeling profoundly disconnected, as though the thread linking them to the essence of life had been cut. What was missing was not money, not love, not security. What was missing was soul. In Jungian thought, the soul is not a religious abstraction. It is the symbolic dimension of life, the ability to experience events, no matter how small, with depth and resonance. When this dimension is neglected, life becomes flat, reduced to checklists and routines. You fulfill roles, but the sense of inner aliveness is gone. Over time, this emptiness expresses itself as boredom, chronic discouragement, or a generalized dissatisfaction that poisons relationships, careers, and families. This is why modern relationships so often falter. You may seek love as though it were medicine, hoping that companionship will restore your lost vitality. But when you carry emptiness within, and when your partner likely carries the same, the result is not renewal but frustration. Two people disconnected from their own souls cannot bring each other wholeness. They collide with mirrored voids, and disappointment is inevitable. This quiet epidemic of meaninglessness is intensified by the values of modern society. We live in a culture that prizes productivity, performance, and image above all else. From early childhood, we are taught to achieve, to compete, to perform, to prove ourselves. Yet rarely are we taught how to listen to our inner life. The world rewards having, while neglecting being. Dreams, intuitions, subtle discomforts, and unexplainable longings are dismissed as irrelevant. But what is ignored does not vanish, it grows louder. And where does this unacknowledged scream make itself heard most powerfully? In relationships. The very spaces where we are most vulnerable become the mirrors reflecting our deepest wounds. The conflicts that repeat, the disappointments that hurt, the sense of never being fully seen, these are not random accidents. They are messages from the soul. The good news is that this collapse is not only destruction. It carries an invitation. It calls you to turn inward, to face what you have ignored. The absence you feel is not a void to be feared, it is a doorway. If you dare to walk through it, you will begin the journey back to the symbolic life, to depth, to meaning. This is the whispering crisis, subtle enough to overlook, yet powerful enough to corrode everything if denied. But it is also the first step toward transformation. Because when you recognize that the emptiness is not a failure of life, but a call from within, you open yourself to a new path, the path that Jung called individuation. Mirrors of the psyche. Every relationship you enter, romantic, familial, or professional, is not only a meeting between two people. It is also a meeting between two unconscious worlds. Beneath the words exchanged and the gestures shared, something deeper is at work. Relationships act as mirrors, reflecting back to you the very parts of yourself you have not yet recognized, accepted, or integrated. Carl Jung was clear: most human bonds are constructed not on pure perception of the other, but on unconscious projection. You rarely see the person as they truly are. Instead, you see them as your psyche needs them to be. The other becomes a screen for unacknowledged desires, old wounds, and long-buried emotions. This is why relationships often feel both intoxicating and destabilizing. They awaken not only affection but also the unresolved fragments of your inner life. Consider how often love begins with enchantment. The new partner seems perfect, complete, almost magical. You may say you feel seen or understood in a way you never have before. In truth, much of this is projection. The psyche has found in the other a container for what you long to recover within yourself: tenderness, strength, creativity, passion, or safety. For a time, the projection holds, and the relationship feels transcendent. But as daily life unfolds, reality intrudes. The beloved disappoints. Their flaws become visible. The pedestal collapses. At that moment, you may feel betrayed, abandoned, or disillusioned. Yet the other has not necessarily changed, they are simply no longer carrying the weight of your unconscious fantasy. What you experience as heartbreak is often the breaking apart of projection. The beloved is revealed as human, and the soul demands that you face the truth: what you sought in them was always yours to integrate. This dynamic does not occur only in romance. In friendships, you may idealize someone as endlessly supportive, only to grow resentful when they fail to meet impossible expectations. In families, children may project perfection or terror onto parents, seeing them as saviors or monsters rather than complex human beings. In the workplace, authority figures may become stand-ins for old images of control, admiration, or fear. Everywhere you turn, the unconscious is at play, using the mirror of relationship to show you what you would rather not see in yourself. The difficulty is that most of us do not recognize this mechanism. We blame the other, the partner who disappointed, the friend who withdrew, the parent who failed, the boss who overstepped. In doing so, we miss the deeper invitation. Each projection is a chance to discover something disowned within. What angers you in another may point to a trait you repress. What enchants you in another may reflect a quality you have not cultivated in yourself. To ignore this is to remain enslaved to unconscious forces, repeating the same patterns again and again. Jung's insight here is both sobering and liberating. Sobering, because it dismantles the fantasy that relationships alone can make you whole. Liberating, because it reveals that you are not helpless. By withdrawing projections, you reclaim the lost parts of your psyche. You begin to see others more clearly, not as carriers of your wounds or fantasies, but as individuals walking their own path. This does not mean relationships lose their magic. On the contrary, when projections dissolve, love can finally become real. Instead of clinging to illusions, you connect to the person as they are. Instead of demanding they save you, you walk beside them as equals. The mirror remains, but it no longer blinds, it guides. To live this way requires courage, the courage to admit that what you see in others is often a reflection of yourself. Yet once you accept this truth, relationships transform from battlegrounds of unmet needs into sacred spaces of growth. They become the very ground where the unconscious reveals itself and where true healing begins. The archetypes of love and struggle. Hidden beneath the surface of every relationship are archetypal forces that shape how we love, fight, and connect. Carl Jung named two of the most influential, the Anima and the Animus. These are not external figures, but inner images, living energies carried within the unconscious. The Anima represents the feminine in the man's psyche, the Animus represents the masculine in the woman's psyche. Together, they form powerful bridges between the conscious mind and the deeper layers of the soul. When recognized and integrated, these forces enrich life. The Anima awakens creativity, sensitivity, and emotional depth in men. The Animus strengthens clarity, confidence, and assertiveness in women. They allow us to balance what is otherwise hidden, creating harmony between inner and outer worlds. But when denied or repressed, these archetypes do not disappear, they take control from the shadows. And it is then that relationships become emotional battlegrounds, filled with misunderstandings, dependency, and destructive cycles. For men, the Anima often appears first through projection. A man encounters a woman who seems magical, mysterious, the answer to his longing. But in truth, much of what he experiences comes not from her reality, but from his own unconscious feminine image. He falls in love not only with the woman, but with a symbol, his own denied emotions, intuition, and sensitivity. This is why he may idealize her, placing her on a pedestal. Inevitably, when she fails to live up to this impossible fantasy, the pedestal crumbles. The muse becomes a threat. Love turns into resentment. The woman has not changed, rather, the projection has collapsed. For women, the Animus operates differently. It manifests as an inner voice of opinion, judgment, and authority. When unconscious, it can dominate from within, coloring how she views men in the external world. She may see them as saviors who must solve her life, or as oppressors who must be resisted. Either way, the relationship is distorted. She does not truly meet the man before her, she interacts instead with an internal masculine figure that speaks through her thoughts and emotions. The result may be submission, dependence, or endless conflict. Neither Anima nor Animus is inherently harmful. They are essential parts of the psyche. But when they are left unexamined, they wreak havoc. They make us fall in love with shadows, despise others without reason, and repeat the same painful patterns. How many times have you found yourself drawn to someone who, in hindsight, was entirely unsuitable? How often have you felt the sting of disappointment when another failed to match the image you carried inside? These are not accidents. They are archetypes at work, demanding recognition. Integration of Anima and Animus is not about rejecting relationships. It is about reclaiming what has been projected. A man who embraces his Anima becomes more whole. He no longer seeks eternal completion in women, but carries sensitivity and intuition within himself. A woman who integrates her Animus gains strength and clarity. She no longer needs to battle external men for authority, because she has discovered her own. Love then becomes less about need and more about presence. Yet this work requires maturity. It demands the courage to confront illusions and withdraw fantasies. It requires accepting that the other will not save you, because they cannot save you. The task is inward. Only when the Anima and Animus are brought into consciousness do relationships cease to be fragile enactments of projection. Only then can two people meet in truth, not as substitutes for unhealed inner figures, but as companions walking side by side. In this light, the struggles of love are not meaningless. They are invitations. Each disappointment, each conflict, each painful collapse is a chance to see which archetype is speaking through you, and which part of your soul is waiting to be integrated. Jung's message is clear: the goal is not to escape struggle, but to use it as a pathway to wholeness. The path of individuation. From the beginning, we are taught a dangerous myth, that somewhere in the world exists a person who will complete us. Stories, films, songs, and cultural ideals all repeat the same message, that love is salvation, that the right partner will heal our wounds, that someone outside of us can make us whole. But Jung, with his relentless honesty, shattered this illusion. He insisted that seeking completion in another is not love, but evasion. It is a way of running from the difficult truth, that the emptiness within us can only be healed from within. This is why so many relationships begin with passion and end in disappointment. What we call falling in love often masks a projection. We are not meeting the other person as they truly are, we are encountering an internal image, anima, animus, shadow, that we have cast outward. At first, the illusion feels divine. But over time, reality intrudes, and the fantasy dissolves. What follows is heartbreak, anger, or despair. Yet the collapse is not failure. It is revelation. It is the soul returning what you tried to outsource. It is the unconscious saying, "Look within." Here lies the threshold of individuation, the central path in Jung's psychology. Individuation is the process of becoming whole, of reconciling the fragmented aspects of the psyche so that you no longer depend on illusions to survive. It is not self-help, not about becoming a better version of yourself for others to admire. It is a symbolic, demanding, and sometimes painful journey back to the truth of what you already are. The task of individuation is to bring the opposites together, to integrate shadow with ego, anima with animus, reason with emotion, strength with vulnerability. Each step requires courage. You must confront rejected impulses, repressed feelings, old wounds you buried to survive. These are not enemies. They are parts of you waiting to be acknowledged. And when they are welcomed back into consciousness, something extraordinary happens. The energy once spent on projection becomes available for genuine presence. A man who integrates his anima becomes more creative, empathetic, and emotionally alive. A woman who embraces her animus becomes more confident, assertive, and inwardly free. The shadow, once feared, transforms into a source of vitality and power. The ego, once fragile, learns to bow to the deeper wisdom of the soul. This is not perfection. It is wholeness. And wholeness is what allows love to flourish. For when you are whole, you no longer demand that others complete you. You do not enter relationships as a beggar seeking rescue, but as a partner offering presence. You no longer cling to fantasy, because you have made peace with reality. And paradoxically, this is when love becomes real, because it is no longer built on illusion. Individuation changes the very texture of relationships. They cease to be desperate attempts at salvation and become spaces of authenticity. Encounters between two whole beings, both imperfect, both aware, become fertile ground for growth. Love is no longer about filling a void, it becomes about sharing abundance. But this path is not easy. It asks you to abandon the comfort of illusions, to stop waiting for someone else to save you. It asks you to face silence, to endure loneliness, to walk through the desert of your own soul. Yet on the other side of this journey lies a freedom unlike any other, the freedom to live from your center, to meet the world without masks, and to love not from need, but from presence. The emptiness you feel, then, is not a punishment. It is a call. A call to descend into yourself, to reclaim the soul you left behind, to awaken from the numbness of projection. And when you answer this call, you will discover that what you sought all along was never outside. It was waiting within you, patient, persistent, and alive. This is the path of individuation, the path from fragmentation to wholeness, from illusion to truth. It is not a quick road, nor an easy one. But it is the only path that leads to love that endures, relationships that transform, and a life rooted in meaning.